my shareholder
Hi,
base is
Hi, this is
episodic.
John Heerdink.
Okay. Yeah.
Welcome to the Tribe Public CEO presentation and Q&A event titled Diabetes Care Innovator Modular Medical Takes Next Steps. My name is John Heerdink again, and I'm the managing member of Tribe Public. As a reminder for all, we're a platform that enables investors to gain direct corporate access to the leaders of companies that they care about through our in-person luncheon and dinner events, now up in 34 event sites across the U.S., from the West Coast, where I'm based in San Francisco. And yes, I'm dressed in a sweater today because, yes, it's foggy and it's summertime. If you've been here, you know what I'm talking about. And but we do have 34 event sites where we're having CEOs from leaders of industry speak and that are corporately sponsored. And in addition to that, we're keeping up with our webinar platform like we have here today. So those that can't be at any one of those sites or that are coming from across the world where we've had 27 plus countries come in can get the same access through these updated events on hopefully a quarterly basis. Thanks again for attending, and please note that our website is tribepublic.com, TRIBE public.com. Please view that for a complete list of disclaimers, and know that I'm a shareholder of this company, and Modular Medical, which trades on the Nasdaq, MODD, and that I'm not in a capacity as an investment advisor today. And that if you're not an advisor and on this call, that you should consult an advisor before making any investments. Please also note that I am, not to confuse you, also the managing director of a registered investment advisor in California called Vista Partners. Its website is vistapglobal.com. Please review the set of disclaimers there as well. Again, thank you for participating, and thank you for the questions you've already sent in. And know that during this relatively brief webinar today, that we target to be around 30 minutes, that you could also send in more questions as they come to mind through the Zoom chat feature. Now let's get started with today's co-host, that is Jeb Besser. He's the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Modular Medical, again, trades on the Nasdaq, MODD, and it's a development stage insulin delivery technology company that's swiftly moving through the FDA clearance process with what seems to be a very exciting entry into the insulin pump space that is where there's a great and significant need that they're attempting to fill. His presentation, again, is called Diabetes Care Innovator Modular Medical Takes Next Steps. Hi, Jeb. Can you say a few words about your background, and also just get us going today? And when you feel comfortable, pull up your PowerPoint to address some slides.
Sure. Thanks for the intro, John, and thanks for attending to all who are new to the story or are just getting an update, which is sort of the way I'm going to gear this in terms of just, I'm going to assume some level of familiarity. If you want to see the full presentation, there's one available on the company's website under the Investors tab, and also available on the website is a short video showing someone putting our product on to demonstrate what we believe to be one of our major features, which is the ease of use that we have in relative to some of the other products in the space. So I guess the first thing that I should say, so my background is that I'm Jeb Besser. I'm the CEO of Modular Medical. I'm also the PM of Manchester Management, which is the largest shareholder of Modular Medical, and I currently take no salary to be the CEO, I believe. And so my incentive structure is very much in line with everyone who either is a potential shareholder or is a current shareholder of Modular Medical. So with that said, I'd say the brief summary on us is we view ourselves as a next generation pump that targets the next group of people who have not yet adopted a pump. And it turns out that 30 years after the introduction of pumps, 8 out of 10 people who could be benefiting from wearing a pump in the United States still aren't wearing one. And we think that the issues that have prevented adoption are a combination of complexity, cost, and cumbersome form factor. And our product, the Mod 1, attempts to address as many of those as possible. So with all of those things said, as many of you know, and I'll pull up the presentation now because this is an update. So there we go. No. On. I'm going to show all windows. There we go. Sorry. Okay. So everyone is very curious as to where we are in the FDA process because, if you've heard our presentations before, we feel that getting FDA clearance is a major value driver because very few pumps have been cleared in this market. Because while no human trials are allowed, because an experimental pump that fails and dumps all the insulin into the patient will kill the patient in about 2 minutes. And so that the approval process is the clearance process is a series of physical tests. These are very challenging tests, and this is a very nasty problem to address in terms of the accuracy that you have to achieve, never failing open, having to have a product that you can wear on your body at a cost point that people can afford, with a ease of use that's acceptable to the general population. So with that said, every device in this market was approved through the predicate device pathway. So they all have the same basic label. And our predicate device is the Tandem t:slim, which was designed and brought through the FDA by our founder, Paul DiPerna, who is still CTO and president of the company. So we submitted our device to the FDA for clearance on January 19th. And the FDA by statute has 60 days to respond to us with a set of questions. And they responded on March 15th. And so since March 15th, up until August 2nd, we were in the process, we were endeavoring to answer those questions to the best of our ability to address the FDA's concerns about our product. So we announced when we updated our presentation over the previous weekend, that we had submitted our answers to these questions on August 2nd. By statute, the FDA now has 30 days to give us a second set of questions or to clear us. Given that our application is at the extremely high end of complexity for medical devices, and it was 22,000 pages long if you paginated it, I think there's a high probability that they will ask us a few more questions. But we're hoping that those questions we'll be able to answer in a shorter fashion than the last set. That being said, it's the FDA. They can ask you whatever question they want that they feel is necessary to safeguard the public. And we fully support their ability to do that. So after we get that second set of questions, we have up to 180 days, although we hope it's a lot less, to respond to those questions. And after we answer the second set, we can once again either be cleared or we can go interactive, meaning that the agency talks to us every couple days with the goal of clearing us with the least commercial burden to us as the sponsor possible. So that's where we are. I mean, these are exciting times. When we get the second set of questions, I think we will have a very, very good sense as to when we might be cleared by the agency. And the date that they have to let us know is right around September 1st. So that's not a lot of time. So it's an exciting time for the company, considering that there's never been a cleared insulin pump company that didn't achieve a $300 million market cap after clearance at some point in the public market. They didn't always keep it if they failed commercially or they had massive execution issues. But we think that there's plenty of upside for equity holders who are with us for this part of the process. So, we want to make sure that everyone knows that we're on a very short clock now. So that would be point one. The other recent development that I want to highlight is on Wednesday, we announced that we were moving our manufacturing line from our R&D facility in San Diego down to Philips Medisize, where they have a full human use facility where we'll be making the product for the US market. And, Philips Medisize, if you haven't heard of them, is a tier 1 contract manufacturer of medical devices. They're part of Koch Industries and Molex. They do $4 billion in annual turnover. They are a major player in medical devices, a tier 1 supplier, and have spent 2+ years devoting engineering resources to helping us make our product better and more manufacturable. and every vendor we use is an approved Philips Medisize vendor. So one, I don't think they would have done that if they thought that our product was going to be a $3 million a year kind of product. And two, I think any potential partner, acquirer, or entity doing due diligence on the company will look at our manufacturing setup and say, wow, that's high quality in tier one. And that's really important because there are a whole bunch of pumps that are cleared elsewhere in the world that are frankly never going to be cleared here. Not safe enough, not manufacturable enough, not consistent enough, and certainly not made at a tier one supplier. And look, I don't think to make major changes to the manufacturing line after we move it down there would be very challenging. So I'd like to think that people can read through that we think that the base design here is very robust and very solid and unlikely to change before product launch.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. It might make some sense, Jeb, to pull up if one of your slides has a picture of the device. For those, there are some new folks here, and just to maybe speak to that a little bit, what your advantages are, why you think this is going to fill this, maybe speak to the overall market, like why is, the size and so forth.
So the overall market, oddly, the penetration of pumps has not changed that much in type 1 since 2006, where you've gone from about 32% penetration to about 36, 37%. In type 2, it's gone from 0 to 8 or 9%, depending on whose numbers you use. So there's been some progress in type 2, but you're still talking about 90% underpenetrated. So why are we different? So we target the almost pumper segment, which are people who self-identify as I want a pump butt. And just to go to another slide for 1 second. So we surveyed 10% of the endocrinologists in the United States and asked them what percentage of your multiple daily injectors, and this is critical, not your current pump users, what percentage of your people who are still using needles and sticking themselves would you put on a pump that was easier to learn, less full-featured, lower cost? And they say 1 in 4. And that's where we size our initial $3 billion market opportunity. And then we surveyed thousands of patients who also said, 45% of whom said, yes, I would go on a pump, but you have to make it easy for me to learn, easy to use, easy to get reimbursement. And if it's more than 10 minutes a day for me to manage, I'm not doing it no matter what. Makes sense, right? Yeah. And this is the analogy that I usually use where, the current pumps are like that beautiful latte machine you might have on your kitchen counter, where if you spin all the knobs and pull all the levers just right, it makes a great cup of coffee. But most people have it Keurig because it's 10% of the work for 80% of the benefit. And that product doesn't exist in pump land right now. So this is the Mod 1 insulin delivery for almost pumpers. So it's a 2-part pump. The electronics and the pumping mechanism are in a 90-day reusable that we give you for free. And then every 90 days, we're going to give you a new one. And that device, the top of that device attaches to a 3-day cartridge with the complexity of a McDonald's Happy Meal. It's about 8 steps. One of them is wash your hands, and one of them is the light on. So it's not very hard to do. And the advantage of that is that you get to reuse the electronics, unlike an insulin Omnipod, where you're throwing all the electronics away every 3 days. You do not need a cell phone to manage this, although you can have an app on your cell phone that'll tell you that it's working. We have NFC and Bluetooth, so we're capable of interfacing once we get an ACE designation with all of the existing CGMs and other kinds of devices that you might use to manage your diabetes. And we also address other concerns. So unlike the insulin Omnipod, which only holds 2 mLs of insulin, we can hold 3. Which is the same as Tandem and Medtronic. So we can access the 25% of type 1s and 65% of type 2s who might want a patch pump, but can't wear an insulin Omnipod unless they're rich enough to be able to go out of pocket every 3 days because they can't get through 3 days on 2 mLs. 2, no cell phone required. 3, you don't have to change a battery. You don't have to charge it on your body at night. You just, every time you get a cartridge, you get a new lithium battery that will power the device for 3 days. And unlike the insulin Omnipod, you can put it on pause and remove it from your body and then put it back and reapply, which is really important from a mental and a physical tethering standpoint. You already feel overburdened by your disease. The last thing you want to do is be stuck with a device that you can't take off for 3 days, both from a social perspective and then just from a comfort perspective. And in terms of being uncomfortable with the adhesive, et cetera. Also, Our injection site is to the side of the device, so it's easier to clear occlusions and it's easier to replace a bad needle set at the cost of 15 cents rather than throwing away the whole device like you would have to do with an Omnipod. So we think because we preset the basal in conjunction with your doctor and we preset the bolus. So it's a custom bolus, but the number of units you get with each button push is customized to you, but you don't get to change it without going back and seeing your doctor. We think that the learning process here is much easier. We've done a study of multiple daily injectors who had never used a pump before, where we gave them our quick start guide, we gave them our controller and a dummy cartridge and said, what is this and what would you do with it? 8 out of 10 could figure out how to put it on correctly and use it correctly in less than 10 minutes. That's very unusual in pump land. And honestly, I think our friends at Beta Bionics are proving that ease of use is really important, right? By taking essentially what is the MiniMed platform and making it and putting an easier to use algorithm on it, they've had some nice uptake. And I think we're taking that in a very different direction in terms of trying to access the people who want a patch pump, people who want to be on the PBM benefit, and who want even more simplicity in terms of initial learning and in terms of an attractive form factor. But let's be clear here. We are no less capable than the leading pumps in terms of accuracy, in terms of safety. In fact, I would argue we're more safe because we're exposing you to less than a tenth of the insulin of the other guys. Every time we spin our cam, we directly sense what's left in the reservoir, and we pump with negative pressure, which means that if our pump fails, it actually pulls insulin away from the patient and back into the reservoir. And we think that failing open is the FDA's biggest concern. So we think that we have a very safe, very smooth, but basal and bolus. And because we were designed very recently and because we use a novel pumping mechanism that is lower cost, we think that the total cost of our device at scale is 50% lower than Insulin's, which allows us to have a differentiated approach in terms of reimbursement, in terms of sampling, in terms of access to the market, et cetera.
Interesting. Yeah. One of the things you announced earlier, I believe it was earlier this year, was a relationship with Gluco. Can you speak to that? And what
So Gluco is another way that we are trying to make the patient experience and the doctor experience easier, frankly, because Gluco you've probably never heard of them, but they are a Swedish company that dominates the point of care portal for pumps, market for pumps. So if you want to download the data from a pump, you probably have Gluco software. They work with Medtronic, they work with Tandem. Insulin is a shareholder of Gluco. Any practice that uses that prescribes Omnipods has Gluco. And so we don't want a provider to say, look, I like your pump, I have patients for it, but I'm not going to teach my nurses how to use a new interface, and I'm not going to show patients and learn how to explain to patients some new report that you've cooked up. So Gluco allows us to have the doctor generate the same report on this is how you did this month in terms of, or in the last few months, in terms of how you're using your pump that everyone else has. And Gluco is going to help store our data in a compliant fashion and manage the patient cloud in a way that's industry standard, rather than once again having us take on that burden. Because look, at the end of the day, this industry does some things well. What we're trying to do is be the lowest cost, easiest to use device that you can have on your body to deliver insulin, and everything else around that we'll partner as much as we possibly can, because we think that's our competitive advantage and our secret sauce.
Got it. And by the way, if you're doing due diligence here after this call, that Gluco, I believe, is spelled Glooko. Is that correct, Jeb?
Show you how it's written. So yeah, right. Glooko. Yeah.
There you go. It's in the third point.
Yeah.
So it's worth checking out. It would seem that they, with Philip Medicize, Gluco, you've done things that are partnering with people that are already known entities around the world that any physician should respect, or and would make you consistent and easy to use upon a clearance.
Well, and I think as long as we're on this slide, it's worth mentioning that the former CEO of Insulet, the only human being who's ever launched a patch pump in the United States, Dwayne DeSisto, joined our board in July of 23. So I don't think he would have done that if he didn't see us as a differentiated play in this market. He knows the market well and thinks that we're different enough from Insulet that there's a place for us, even though obviously we're coming to market a lot later than they are.
Got it. Okay. A couple of questions have already come in too. Additional question says, what settings would a provider need to put in the device?
So the provider would need to give you a basal rate and how much each push of the button will produce in terms of bolus delivered. This is pretty standard. Medtronic and Tandem have had a quick bolus button on the face of their device for more than 10 years. So we don't think that that's terribly novel in terms of the provider being unfamiliar with how to set that. And, in consultation with the endo and the nurse diabetes educator, a patient usually sets their basal. And believe it or not, according to the ADA, 45% of current pump patients, after they got that initial basal setting, never changed it again. So they're not using 99% of the functionality available on the other pumps to feather your basal in some way based on your behavior or your exercise or sleep or whatever. They just keep it the same all the time. And so that ability to not, what we're not giving them isn't important enough for 45% of current pump users to ever have interacted with. So I don't think the next 5 to 10% of pump adopters are going to be overly focused on it.
Okay.
So that's what we're not giving them. And you can change it. You just have to go back to you just have to make an appointment and go back and have your endo change it for you.
Got it. Another question has come up. It says, what age indication will you have for the product, or have you gone that far?
So initially it'll be adults because pediatrics requires more clinical work. And so we've committed to the agency that we're going to go back and do the backfill work for pediatrics. But every pump on the market today was approved first for adults. Because obviously it's once you're approved, it's easier to do actual testing. And actual testing with children, having the FDA gold standard that you're not going to fail and kill someone is important in terms of enrolling peds in a usability trial. So we'll target the pediatric application, and there's no reason we can't serve that market. But we're, one of the more important lessons from Paul's experience at Tandem was don't ask the FDA more than one question at a time. And we've tried very, very hard not to ask them more than one question at a time. Another example of that is our set. So we use this little pigtail that comes off to the side is a set that we buy from Ypsomed. And the reason we chose that set is that Ypsomed has already gotten that set cleared. And so we don't want the FDA to say, we love your pumping mechanism, we hate your set. Try again. We want to de-risk. We want to have them clear the pumping mechanism and then go back and start adding incremental features like ACE, like pediatric access and other varieties, other options as far as the set.
Yeah. And then correct me if I'm wrong on that chart or the timeline that you put up process. I think you had resubmitted your response on August 2nd, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And so
yep. It's step 3. Step 3. It's right there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not.
You've accomplished that. Now it's 30 days from August 2nd that the FDA has to come back and either give you some additional questions or clarity on your responses or clear the device.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And as I said, I view it as a 95% likelihood that they or higher that they will ask us a few more questions because of the complexity and the nature of our application.
Yeah, and it's a natural process, but still, then it's back in your hands and your control. So if it's not too significant, and being that you've already seen the big library of questions in the first go, and it would seem like you could hopefully turn that around relatively quickly, depending on what they come back with.
I think it's really important to understand that that there's a reason that they only get 30 days to ask you a second set of questions. It's meant to be, although it's not required to be, a smaller, more focused subset, because they've already looked at your application. They've already thought about a lot of questions. And that doesn't mean that they can't throw really tough questions at you, and as they have every right to. It just means that it's likely to be more focused.
Got it.
And give us a very good sense as to where we stand in terms of when this might get cleared. And as I've said publicly before, my plan would be, once we get that second set of questions, we have a good sense of that glide path. We want to go out and see if there's a strategic partner or acquirer for this after clearance, or if this is a product that we're going to be running on our own for a while. And obviously, that's an important thing to know in terms of making decisions on capital allocation and commercialization activities.
Got it.
So we're not that far away from starting that process.
Okay. And switching gears a little bit, because we're getting long on the session here today that we have you for. Can you speak again? So you had a financing early this year, which you led, and can you speak to your ownership now and post that, and also where you are from a financing standpoint?
We own about 12% of the company. And we continue to be supportive of the name, and we would have probably done more on the deal that was done earlier this year, except for the fact that Nasdaq said that it wasn't an independent deal if we did more than 10% of it.
Yeah,
in terms of price.
And that investment was about $1 million. It was $1 million, right?
We put in about $1 million. Yep.
Okay.
That's right. Okay, so where does that take us? So our cash runway lasts us right now into, call it mid to late Q4. We're very eager to sort of see where we need to take our cash runway based on what this next set of questions looks like, because either we're trying to extend it just a little bit because we think that capital will be much cheaper when we get cleared, or and we obviously don't want to dilute ourselves if there's a potential partner for the asset, right after clearance. And frankly, given our relative valuation to everyone that's gone before, or what Medtronic seemed to be willing to pay for EOFlow last year when they bid $740 million for a pump that wasn't cleared yet in the US, in Korea, that looks a lot like an Omnipod, I frankly think that we need to see what's out there, and in any event, we didn't come all this way to just heavily dilute ourselves at these prices, right? I think that we'll need more than $5 million to commercialize this thing. I think anyone would warranty to that. So to my mind, it's we want to get across that FDA binary with as little capital as possible, but while still doing the things that we need to do in order to be ready to scale. And that's why what we will spend money on in this interim period is things that increase our gross margins in the near term and increase our throughput, because any acquirer would value that just as much as I would. No acquirer is going to put a multiple on my pre-commercialization activities.
So with that being said, do you seem to be in a pretty good position now after this process you've run this year, coordinating with the FDA, and I guess what do you see as I guess switching gears, you one of the things that you mentioned that you sent a press release about was working and looking into the weight loss category as well with this device. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So it just happens that the design of our device, the dosage range that we use, and our ability to produce both a basal and a bolus, we think are interesting in the GLP-1 market for weight loss, specifically in type 2. Why do we think that there's any opportunity there at all? Why, let me get this out of the way right up front. If you can tolerate a one-size-fits-all weekly shot, there's no way you're ever wearing a pump. And I totally get that. And I think that makes a ton of sense. So, our mantra is, what can we do to make patients' lives better and provide better care without additional cost, without much additional cost and complexity. So one of the biggest pushbacks on the GLP-1s is that we know from this Blue Cross Blue Shield study that came out in June that 35% of people who are prescribed a GLP-1 drop the product or drop the therapy within 4 weeks, and 50% within 12. And there's another study that suggests that only 1 in 7 is on after 2 years. So there's this big dropout rate, and we know that if you drop off the therapy, you have immediate bounce back in weight for most people, and you lose the benefits. So we think that there's an opportunity to use an existing GLP-1 molecule in a pump to give you the ability, if you're feeling the negative GI effects, vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, etc., to just be able to put it on pause and then have those effects dissipate, which you can only do if you use an older, shorter acting GLP-1, but by delivering it in a basal dose, and possibly giving you the opportunity to bolus around a meal, then you're potentially giving yourself a lot more control. So we're targeting non-responders who can't tolerate the current GLP-1s. And so we're doing a study at Gubra, which is the gold standard in terms of proof of concept studies in rodents. They're right next door to Novo Nordisk. If you haven't heard of them, they have 250 employees. They're a major player in doing this kind of work, and people take their work very, very seriously. So would we do this the value of this is as a platform, right? So would we do this if we thought that there were major changes coming for the pump platform? I don't think so. So it's another read through, sort of like the Philips Medisize announcement, that we feel pretty good about where we are in terms of the design of our product, and that there are lots of other things that you can do with it once it's on the market. And look, this is a big opportunity, right? If it would clearly have to be pre-filled. We're the only pump that's made out of plastics that could take pre-fill that we know of, and it requires a 3 ml reservoir to credibly deliver this GLP-1 for 3 days. So we think we're uniquely positioned, without changing anything about the design of the pump or being distracted by this, to see if this concept works. And we think that, even a 1 or 2% share of the Morgan Stanley projected $150 billion market for GLP-1s in 5 years would be a very significant piece of business for a little company like us.
Yeah.
And the customers are the same. They're endocrinologists.
It's interesting, from that perspective as well. You build a platform here, and it's based on IP. And so if you can show this as well, I mean, the Lillys of the world might actually look at this, that are leading that GLP-1. It would be interesting that if players like that would enter and back into diabetes, et cetera, in addition to, Abbott, Medtronics, Insulet, Tandem, Dexcom, these companies that a lot of people associate with insulin pumps. This is a very interesting crew that you're sort of assembling. Can you just speak quickly to your IP portfolio and how you protected this company and created value from that standpoint?
So we have 8 families of patents around our pump. And when I say families, it means it's not a single patent. It's a variety of patents. But you can't patent pumping insulin anymore. That ship sailed a long time ago. What you can patent are various aspects of the way that we move the insulin, the way that we provide patient safety, and the way that we actually sense what's left in the reservoir, which is proprietary and patent protected, and really important when you're pumping at this small a quantity. The other pumps don't have any way to sense what's left in the reservoir. They intuit that based on how many times they've spun their cam. It's like I don't have a gas gauge, I just have an odometer, would be the car analogy there. So I think that our use of the air pressure sensor is important, and it's highly reliable and very low cost, and frankly just didn't exist in this form when the other products that are in this space were designed. So the IP is around, could we generate potentially some novel IP around the GLP-1 application? Yeah, probably. But we're going to have to see how the proof of concept studies prove out before we do something like that. We did announce that we were issued a patent on wireless data capture for our pump, which basically means, if a patient comes in and they want their endo to know how they're doing with their pump, and they have 3 or 4 of our controllers, instead of having to awkwardly figure out which controller is which and pair through Bluetooth and download the data, You can just simply power them up and tap them and pull all the data off that way and know which one you're tapping from, which could be if many people that start using our pump and you have 20 different controllers with Bluetooth signals floating around in your office, the last thing you want to do is guess which one you're pairing with. So just not set the world on fire kind of IP, just simple blocking and tackling. Once again, anything that makes the patient's life easier, the doctor's life easier, and saves the system money and allows for better care with less work.
Makes sense. One last question just popped up. It says, how will patients handle corrections if they have a high blood sugar?
How will they handle corrections if they have high blood pressure?
Or high blood sugar, sorry.
Well, high blood sugar? Well, one, you can always, if you're going high, you can just bolus yourself. That's what insulin is for. If you're, and the whole purpose of a pump is to give you two things that needles and strips can never give you, which is one, that slow basal drip all day long for about half your insulin, which keeps you much closer to baseline. So you're unlikely to have these big excursions. You're less likely to have big excursions. And when you do have a meal, we know that you're much more likely to bolus in smaller amounts and more frequently if you can just push a button. And that's been proven over and over and over again. And so, and look, from a patient perspective, it just makes practical sense, right? Are you more likely to stab yourself at the table or excuse yourself to the bathroom and do the same? Or are you more likely to push a button discreetly through your clothing a number of times in a sequence? So that's what we're giving you the ability to do. I think I've seen numbers as high as 15% of people who require daily basal and bolus insulin don't ever take their needle set out of their house and try and manage through diet in the middle of the day. I mean, I think just giving someone a pump and giving them an ability to electronically interact with this that's the value that we're providing. I mean, at the end of it, ultimately, I think our typical patient is going to be someone who's like an 8.5 or a 9 A1C, who's hoping to get to, who could get to a 6.5 to a 7 with our product, not someone who's a 6.2 hoping to get to a 5.4.
Jeb, I want to thank you for coming on today, and I want to remind that all that we're going to have this event video published as soon as possible later today at the TriPublic YouTube channel. And so if you missed anything or want to review it, you can go view that and speed through it as quickly as you would choose to do so, and see some of these slides. And also refer others that might be interested that couldn't make it today to view it as well, to learn more about Modular Medical. Again, Modular Medical trades on the Nasdaq, MODD. And if you got any questions, you can always give me a call or a ping, or we can try to get Jeb back on the line at a later date and give us an update on that and address additional questions. I want to thank all of you for participating. I would leave it with Jeb. Is there anything else you'd like to end with here as a takeaway for those that attended today? Again, thank you all.
I'd say just stay tuned. Obviously, this is a pretty short fuse here with the agency, and we're not going to put out 8Ks on the inner workings of the process with the agency, but we updated slide 17 of our deck on the website when we responded to the questions on August 2nd, and you should look on that slide for more of the same when the agency comes back to us with additional questions, if they do.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Jeb. Thank you, Modular Medical. And also thank you all, the tribe that have attended today. And we'll look forward to keep you updated through our Tribe This Week e-newsletter that comes out every Friday afternoon. And also let me know if there's anything else you'd like to know about Modular Medical, and we'll do our best to try to assist in that due diligence process. Thanks again, Jeb.
Thank you.